In the high desert of New Mexico, silence is the only constant. It is a landscape of vast horizons, scrub brush, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. If you drive south from Santa Fe, past the small, dusty, unincorporated community of Stanley, you eventually come upon a gate. It is unassuming at first glance, barely distinguishable from the entrances to other large cattle ranches in Santa Fe County. But the land behind this gate was not a working ranch. It was a kingdom of secrets. For decades, locals whispered about the property. They saw the black SUVs with tinted windows speeding down the gravel roads. They noticed the security cameras that seemed to outnumber the pinon trees. And they wondered about the massive, brutalist structures rising from the earth. Buildings that looked less like homes and more like institutional facilities. This was Zorro Ranch. While the world would eventually fixate on a townhouse in Manhattan or a private island in the Caribbean, it was here, on nearly 8,000 acres of remote American soil, that Jeffrey Epstein built his most private sanctuary. It was here that he planned to house a scientific legacy that sounded like science fiction. And it was here, in 2019, that federal agents and state police finally breached the perimeter, uncovering a trove of evidence that hinted at the true scale of the operation. Today we are opening the files on Zorro Ranch. We are looking at the blueprints, reading the inventory logs from the search warrants, and walking through the corridors of a house designed for control. The island was for the cameras. The ranch was for the master plan. To understand Zorro Ranch, you must first understand the geography. Stanley, New Mexico is not a tourist destination. It is a place people go to disappear. The population is sparse, the cell service is spotty, and the nearest neighbor is often miles away. It is the perfect environment for someone who requires absolute privacy and has the money to enforce it. Epstein acquired this land in the early 1990s from the family of former New Mexico Governor Gary King. This was not a simple real estate transaction. It was the acquisition of a territory. Over the years, he expanded the holdings, stitching together parcel after parcel until the property spanned over 7,500 acres, an area larger than some small cities. This massive footprint served a strategic purpose, a buffer zone. By owning the horizon, he ensured that no prying eyes could see the main compound from the public road. The centerpiece of this dominion was the main residence, a sprawling mansion exceeding 30,000 square feet. But unlike the neoclassical architecture of his New York home, or the colorful, bizarre aesthetic of the island, Zorro Ranch was industrial. It was built with heavy concrete, massive wooden beams, and reinforced infrastructure. It was designed to survive. While the media often focused on the social aspect of Epstein's crimes, the New Mexico property highlights a different obsession: science, or rather a distorted version of it. This ranch was the venue for conferences involving Nobel laureates and theoretical physicists. It was where he courted the scientific elite, far away from the distractions of the city. But as we peel back the layers of what was actually built there, the line between a retreat for intellectuals and a facility for trafficking becomes terrifyingly blurred. When we analyze the architectural plans and the accounts of those who worked on the property, a disturbing pattern emerges. The design of the main house was not merely for comfort, it was for observation and containment. The main residence is a 3-story structure built into a hill, giving it a fortress-like appearance. Inside, the layout was labyrinthine. Contractors and visitors described long hallways that seemed to lead nowhere, heavy doors that required keypads to open, and walls that were soundproofed to an industrial standard. The centerpiece of the living area was a massive living room, flanked by what was described in police reports as a massage room, a euphemism that has become central to the criminal investigation. But the most perplexing structure on the property stood apart from the main house. Visible from aerial satellite imagery, it was a large, windowless building located on a hilltop, painted with horizontal stripes. Neighbors and internet sleuths dubbed it the temple. For years, theories ran wild about its purpose. Was it a religious site? A bunker? Building permits and blueprints labeled it as a music room and gym. However, the design contradicts standard recreational use. The doors were reinforced. The lack of natural light was absolute. When agents eventually entered the structure, they found a space that felt ceremonial, almost distinct from reality. The temple stands as a physical manifestation of the psychology of the ranch, a place designed to look like one thing on paper, but to function as something entirely different in practice. Below the surface, the rumors of tunnels have persisted for years. While many sensationalist claims about underground networks are exaggerated, the blueprints do confirm an extensive subterranean footprint. There were utility tunnels, large basements, and heated driveways designed to melt snow instantly, infrastructure that required massive underground mechanical rooms. These subterranean spaces provided logistical stealth, allowing staff, supplies, and guests to move through the complex without ever being seen from the outside. In August 2019, shortly after Epstein's arrest, the silence of the high desert was broken. A convoy of FBI agents and New Mexico State Police descended on Zorro Ranch. They arrived with search warrants authorized by federal judges, looking for specific evidence of trafficking, sexual abuse, and financial crimes. The inventory logs from this raid, which were later unsealed, provide a chilling, itemized list of what life was like inside the walls. This was not a chaotic crime scene. It was a sterile, organized archive of abuse. Agents moved room by room. In the computer room, they seized hard drives, towering servers, and stacks of CDs. Epstein was known to document everything, and the digital footprint at the ranch was massive. They found computers that controlled the property's intricate security system, a system that monitored every door, every gate, and arguably every room. In the master suite and the office, the findings were more personal and more damning. The logs list massage tables and bottles of oil, corroborating the accounts of victims who were trafficked to New Mexico. But they also found things that hinted at the bizarre double life Epstein led. Agents catalogued a fake Austrian passport with a different name but Epstein's photo. They found loose diamonds. They found piles of cash. Perhaps most disturbing were the photographs, the search warrant return lists, stacks of photographs of young females. These were not digital files hidden in a folder. They were physical prints, kept openly in the residence. The brazenness of the evidence suggests a man who never believed he would be caught. In this isolated kingdom, he was the law, and he believed the walls of Zorro Ranch were thick enough to keep the outside world at bay forever. To understand why Zorro Ranch existed, we have to look beyond the abuse and look at the philosophy that drove it. Reporting from major investigative outlets revealed that Epstein had a specific, twisted vision for this property. He didn't just want to party, he wanted to engineer the future. This brings us to the most controversial and unsettling theory surrounding the New Mexico property, the concept of a transhumanist breeding ground. According to scientists and academics who were invited to Epstein's gatherings, he was obsessed with transhumanism and eugenics. He reportedly expressed a desire to seed the human race with his own DNA, using the vast expanse of Zorro Ranch as a base for this project. While this sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, the layout of the ranch supports the idea of a facility designed for a large, controlled population. The guest houses were numerous. The infrastructure was capable of supporting a small village. He courted geneticists and evolutionary biologists, inviting them to the ranch for conferences that were a mix of legitimate science and his own pseudoscientific ramblings. This context changes how we view the physical evidence. The isolation wasn't just about hiding crimes, it was about creating a controlled environment for a social experiment. The victims brought to the ranch were not just there for gratification. In Epstein's delusional worldview, they were potentially part of a larger, darker biological project. As investigators sifted through the evidence in late 2019, a picture formed of a surveillance state. This is the crucial revelation of Zorro Ranch. It was a trap. Court documents suggest that the property was wired for sound and video in a way that exceeded even high-security government facilities. Every interaction, every movement, and every conversation was potential leverage. The blackmail tapes that have been the subject of speculation for decades likely originated here, in the quiet rooms of the desert mansion. The most shocking realization from the unsealed documents isn't just what was found, but what was missing. By the time the FBI arrived in August 2019, Epstein had been in custody for weeks and under investigation for months before that. There were gaps in the surveillance logs, hard drives were found, but questions remain about whether the master archives were ever located. The ranch was designed with redundancies. It had backup generators, water treatment plants, and that massive safe. When agents cracked the safe, they found the diamonds and the passport, but they arguably did not find the smoking gun recordings that many believe exist. This leads to the terrifying conclusion that the most dangerous evidence from Zorro Ranch may have been moved, destroyed, or is still buried somewhere in the thousands of acres of scrubland, waiting to be unearthed. The legal proceedings revealed that the staff at Zorro Ranch were compartmentalized. The housekeepers cleaned specific rooms at specific times. The groundskeepers managed the exterior, but were forbidden from entering certain zones. It was a compartmentalized machine, ensuring that no single witness saw the entire picture. It took the combined force of the federal government to shatter that compartmentalization, and even then, we are only seeing fragments of the truth. In 2021, the Zorro Ranch was listed for sale. The asking price was $27.5 million. The listing touted the grandeur and the privacy, stripping away the horrific context of what occurred within those walls. It eventually sold, and the new owners have likely begun the process of remodeling, perhaps tearing down the structures that housed so much pain. But geography has a memory. The blueprints, the police logs, and the victim testimonies have ensured that Zorro Ranch cannot simply be erased from history. It stands as a monument to how wealth can buy isolation, and how isolation can breed monstrosities. It was a place where science was twisted into a justification for abuse, and where the desert was used as a weapon of silence. The story of Zorro Ranch reminds us that the most dangerous places aren't always dark alleys. Sometimes they are multi-million-dollar estates sitting in the bright desert sun, hiding behind a gate that says private property. As we continue to investigate the networks of power that allowed this to happen, we have to ask, if this was what they found in the one house we know about, what is hidden in the properties we haven't looked at yet? If you want to explore more dark corners of science, history, and criminal psychology, and help us uncover the stories they try to keep buried, hit that subscribe button. The truth is out there, and we are going to find it.